Lock gas foils in attack position and switch your deflectors on. It is time for another episode of Red 5 Standing By. I am one of your hosts, Jedi Master Ecom Nuos, and with me, as always, is Jedi Master Johnny D.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining, and hello, Master Newhouse. Thanks for hosting.
Yes. This week we will be talking about Episode 7 of The Acolyte. A little bit of review, a little bit of theory, and a whole lot of fun. So get ready and strap in.
Yes, strap in for another exciting episode of Red 5 Standing By. All right, Master Newhouse. So, as always, get us started and get us going into this journey through the latest adventures of the Star Wars franchise.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, this week we'll be talking about Episode 7, titled Choice. This episode was directed by Kogonada, the same person that directed Episode 3, which was called Destiny. And this episode was written by Jen Richards, Joaquin Floring, and Charmaine DeGreat. One thing I'm going to take off right off the beginning here is because I've kind of been going on about how I theorized how like all the episodes had the two titles. I thought maybe episodes 4 and 5 were supposed to be one episode that got split into two, but I have been proven wrong, Jedi Master Johnny D.
Oh, yeah?
There is something that's happening with when they decide to use the dual titles and when they go with the solo titles. And it has nothing to do with, I was completely wrong about being one episode and all that. What the actual is going on is anytime that the title is one word means the twins share scenes in that episode. Every episode that the twins do not interact with each other are the episodes that have the two words in the title, and anytime it's a single word, that means that the twins are going to be interacting with each other. So that is one mystery solved.
Okay. That was someone else discovered that for you and you read that, or did you figure that out yourself?
So I saw someone else point it out.
Okay, well, anyway, that's pretty.
That's what's going on.
But did they figure it out themselves, or did they get it from the authors or the writers, or do they say that they figured it out, and then people double check their work?
I'm assuming they just figured it out themselves. They never mentioned it in any of the things that I'd been following, and it's just this episode they just pointed it out, and I was like, okay. So I guess
that's the great thing about the Star Wars fan community is that there's so many people doing some great detective work.
Indeed.
That's great.
And before we get into spoilers, there is something else I want to bring up about the Acolyte here. I try not to get too much into what is said outside of the show by creatives and Disney and so on and so forth. I try to let the shows speak for themselves. But I kept hearing this term called Rashomon storytelling. And
yeah.
I'll admit my ignorance. I did not know what that meant, and I actually just found out. I thought Rashomon was a storytelling device, but it's not. Apparently, it's an actual movie that was made by Akira Kurosawa, who is very, very heavily influenced George Lucas. So, first of all, Johnny D, have you heard of this Rashomon movie that Kurosawa made?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did I did film studies at class a long time ago, and they talked about Rashomon. It's actually So I'm aware of the movie. It's actually I think it's actually based on the concept of having different viewpoints from different characters. I believe actually it was from probably a novel or epic poem that was written in Japan like 1,000 years ago. That's how old that device is. But it's unique to Japan. Like the Japanese, I'm not sure if any other civilizations kind of got that concept, but they definitely nailed it with Rashomon, and that's where the Rashomon concept comes from. And Kurosawa also made a movie about it. But I believe it's from a novel written 1,000 years ago in medieval Japan.
To be clear, what Rashomon is, like I said, it's an actual movie, but it is a storytelling device where you're seeing the same events, but from different perspectives or narrators.
Yeah.
correct? So you never actually saw this Rashomon movie,
No,
but you
I've only
studied it.
seen Kurosawa movies. I've seen Seven Samurai, which is great. That's definitely the classic. If you're gonna see one movie, see that one of Kurosawa. I also
Okay.
saw what he did in the '80s. It was long. It was long. It was like battle after battle after battle. I think it was called Ran. I think.
Is that the
Uh,
one that George Lucas helped finance?
Possibly. It was done in color. It was amazing because it had a lot of battles. It was cool because it was in the set place in the 1600s of Japan. So it's when they have like rifles, like muskets, because they got muskets. Because Japan got like some early trade with, I think, the Dutch and maybe some Italians. Not Italians, but Dutch and maybe some Portuguese.
Okay.
Uh, right around the time of 1600, right time actually of the movie and television show, the television series Shogun. But so they got some guns, but then they cut off all trade, and then they basically became this isolated society for another 300 years. But they got guns, they got muskets. So there's all these battles of like samurai, like the full on like armor and swords, but then there's like all these guys with guns, like muskets, right? It's intense, very intense movie. But yeah, those are two Kurosawas I've seen.
Okay.
I should see more probably because he's considered one of the greats.
Well, indeed, right?
Yeah,
Would
I've not
you
seen Rashomon.
say?
Not seen Rashomon.
Would you say that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead would be an example of a Rashomon type storytelling?
Well, that is basically no, because I think Rashomon you're supposed to have different viewpoints in the same story. That's just a different viewpoint in a whole different movie or play,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Which is also one of my. That is definitely one of my favorite movies. Gary Oldman, Tim Roth.
I knew you were a fan. There's a reason I brought.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's one of the only things that I was thinking of, like trying to come up with.
That's done it. Yeah. I mean, it's probably it's definitely like it's TV shows have done it. I'm sure before. I mean, but yes, obviously the Acolyte is doing it. Right?
Yes. Because as I prefaced all of this, it was well known that the creator, Lena Headland, had said that she was heavily inspired by Rashomon and that she was going to utilize that storytelling technique in The Acolyte. So yeah, and
to correct myself because I'm using Google here, I guess it was a story. It was not 1,000 years ago. It's apparently it was a story written in the 1915.
Okay.
So
is there any other like? Can you think of an American-made movie in the last, say, 20 years that used this storytelling device?
Oh, I'm sure there is, but I'd have to think hard enough, and I can't.
There's only one.
There's
only one, and I'm only going to bring it up because it actually kind of circles back to our last episode. There was a movie after Lost ended that starred Matthew Fox. I forget exactly what the movie was called, but it was a single event, but it was told by 8 different perspectives throughout the movie, and Matthew Fox's character was one of the perspectives. What was that? I almost want to say it was called Vanishing Point.
Yeah, that sounds like a title of a movie that Matthew Fox would make right after he's done his like that some star from a TV show is going to make. That's going to be their kind of one chance movie, and then they disappear in obscurity. That movie is going to be called something like Vanishing Point. You know, it's like generic kind of Hollywood title.
It was actually a very good movie.
I'm sure it was.
I would not say it was a B movie. It was an A-list movie when it came out, and I think it did fairly well. I mean, $100 million. So, but anyway, yeah. Okay, so that's Rashomon. So, I'm kind of curious. I don't really know why she decided to use that storytelling technique to tell this story, but I'm guessing it makes sense when the focus is on the twins. So I guess, yeah.
And what's the director's name again? Kanada?
The director of this episode?
Yeah.
Koganada.
I mean, that sounds Japanese. I'm looking at Koganada.
Koganada.
Oh, Korean. Okay. Well, Korean, I'm sure whatever. Right. I'm sure the Koreans have similar. I'm sure he can appreciate Japanese cinema.
Well, I would say Korean cinema is probably the most successful cinema from any country besides Hollywood. Like, there's been a lot of Korean hits in the last 10 years.
Oh, I mean, Korean culture is like Like it's totally like it's definitely if we were playing a game of Civilization 6, Korea definitely has been having a good last 20 years in the culture sphere part of that game. You know that game, right?
Yes.
I mean, just with their the K-pop phenomenon itself, right? But yeah, definitely. I mean, Japan definitely was like the biggest from after World War II. They definitely were the top exporter of culture, right? With
Right.
anime and their movies. But yeah, Korea
Yes.
definitely has stepped up their game, and
Yes.
definitely with all the K-pop stuff and Squid Game and all that stuff, right? So
Huh. Yeah. What is there any Korean? I mean, I'm so out of the anime. I don't really know what's what. Is there any like popular anime out there right now that is from Korea? Because you're right. I do associate anime with Japan.
probably there's so many I can't keep up. I keep on
Yeah.
talking to various family
Well, that's the
members I know that are of that demographic, and I can't keep up. I
well,
think the
and that's
last
where
show on Netflix is called One Piece. I think that's Japanese, or it might be Korean actually. It's a big.
right.
It's been going on for like 20 seasons, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and it
That's
just
the
came out on
barrier for me
Netflix.
from getting into anime is it's just so daunting because it's not like there's there's 10 episodes of this. It's like anything that I've like, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, well, there's 200 episodes of it. I'm like,
Exactly.
oh God.
Yeah. So what One Piece is the latest live action version, but that's Japanese. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm not. I mean, I can go on a roll. I can go on a Google roll here, just to see if I put a Korean anime, what do I get here?
Yeah. What is the most popular Korean
What's the
anime?
first one that shows up? Top 10 Korean anime to watch in 2024. It's a video, so videos are useless to me right now. Nobody does lists anymore. It's super annoying. Looks like it says Wonderful Days, Red Shoes, and the Seven Dwarfs. I've never heard of these, so I
I've
don't
never
think
heard. So
think Korea's really. I don't think South Korea's really. I think it's still dominated. The anime market's still
Korea's
dominated from
pumping out
Japanese.
the live action content. That's very good, and Japan is pumping out the anime still.
Yeah,
So
and the
uh,
K-pop,
all right. And the K-pop. Yes.
Gangnam Style.
All right. Well, I'm about ready to dive into spoilers, but before I do, is there anything that you wanted to share with us or get off your chest before we get into the breakdown?
I think I would probably say that last episode is probably the best episode of the series so far. That's my initial take.
That's good. Okay, that's a good thing to hear because I think like this episode was kind of the make or break episode for this series. I mean, it's the penultimate episode before we go into the finale next week. And yeah, so I mean, a lot was really I mean, the whole mystery of this season so far has been what happened on Brendok 16 years ago. We got a little bit of that in episode 3, and we got the rest of that. Well, I'm not sure we got all of it, but we got more of it in this episode 7 choice. So I think, let's get right into it here. So this is where the Rashomon storytelling kind of comes in because like I said earlier, we had the episode 3, which was titled Destiny, which was a flashback to 16 years ago on Brendok, and it showed us the perspectives of May and Osha and what they were doing on this planet when the Jedi showed up. It kind of, I mean, it was open for interpretation, but it was kind of made the Jedi look a little shady by them all of a sudden showing up out of nowhere and saying, hey, we're interested in taking your kids away and training them in the way of the Force. And so this episode is the Jedi perspective. For the most part, there are some things that happen in this episode that the Jedi would not have been privy to. So, I mean, I'm a little foggy on exactly what the rules of the narrative are, I would have to admit a little bit, because if this is from the Jedi perspective, there were a couple of scenes that the Jedi were not involved in. So if the narrative is from their perspective, how would we be getting this? But I digress. So this episode opens up on Brendok. We see the 4 Jedi that we saw earlier, and they're just kind of, it's like they're surveying the planet. They're going over things. They're looking for things. And then so we find out that they've actually been stationed there for 7 weeks. The one Padawan out of the 4 Jedi, Jedi Padawan Torben, right from his first scene, you can tell that he is not enjoying himself, and he's already talking about going back to Coruscant.
Yes, Survivor Man, he is not.
And his Jedi Master Indara reference, she actually says, "I know how you feel." So this isn't something new. This isn't just he's coming out of nowhere saying, "I want to go home." He's obviously been talking about this for the 7 weeks. So we're given that little bit of clue through that dialogue there. So yeah, it's a little bit of establishment. We end up around a campfire, and again, Torben is saying like, "This feels like a waste of time. What are we doing here?" And that's when we're slapped with a couple of big reveals. His Jedi Master, she tells him that they are here because 100 years ago, after a hyperspace disaster, this planet was cataloged as lifeless. And obviously, this planet is not lifeless because it's not just a barren rock. There's all sorts of plantation and animal species, insects, all sorts of life is happening here. And then Jedi Master Saul chimes in and says that they think there is a vergence in the Force, and that's why they're there. They're here because this planet is supposed to be dead. It's full of life, and they are suspecting that there is a vergence in the Force, and they're there to try and find
all that life to show up, right?
Yes.
Or there was faulty readings, but yes, I assume the readings are correct. But that's be incredible to have all that life show up in 100 years.
Yes. So what this hyperspace disaster is, it's actually called the Great Hyperspace Disaster. And this
the Great Hyperspace Disaster.
The Great Hyperspace Disaster. And the entire High Republic initiative that Disney started with 3 years ago, that was the first event. That, if you read the first book or the comic, there was a giant freighter ship traveling to the Outer Rim with thousands of colonists and supplies to start life on a new planet. And something happened while they were traveling through hyperspace that the ship exploded. And so over the next few years, there was randomly stuff from this ship that exploded in hyperspace was emerging from hyperspace at random points in time and at random places and flying out at faster than light speeds and crashing. Some planets were destroyed, star systems were destroyed, and it shut down all hyperspace traffic for a period of time. So this
that's incredible stuff. I mean, I totally forgot about how they said the planet was lifeless. I totally forgot that they said, because they did mention the Great Hyperspace disaster. And and all those extra details, those are from the books, obviously, right?
Yeah, all the stuff that I'm telling you about the hyperspace, those all come from the books.
We'll continue with that, but I must say, that is pretty incredible. And cool, that's pretty interesting things. And there's a lot of questions too, like mysteries, what's behind it all. But continue, Newhouse.
I won't get too far into that because I'll try and stay relevant to what's happening to the Acolyte. But when I'm reading about this hyperspace disaster, I was like, this actually sounds pretty cool, and I was interested in it. So I'm just sharing what I learned about it.
Well, it also makes me think about the expansionists. There's did they slow down expansion? And it's like was this the first time they've gone out to the outer rim in a while? Is it slowing it down? There's lots of questions about the politics and where the Republic is at with what systems they have, and how void of civilization or Republic influence is the Outer Rim at this point, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, the expansionist region is not in the Outer Rim. The expansion region is between the center core of the galaxy and the Outer Rim, and they have been a part. They have been a part of the Republic for a couple of 100 years, but the politics are, because they are closer to the Outer Rim, that the Jedi don't get out there very much. So part of the benefit of being a part of the Republic, they're not getting that benefit because the Jedi they're not stationed out there. It's very the Jedi have to be sent out there on a mission. So these planets came in to become part of the Republic, but they're starting to feel left out because, we're paying our taxes. We're supposed to be getting protection from the Jedi. We're supposed to be getting guidance from the Jedi, and we're not getting any of that. And so that's why in the last episode, they brought up they want to do an internal review of the Jedi because they feel like they're contributing everything to this Republic society, but they're not getting enough back from it. So that is why at this point in time, after 1,000 of years, there hasn't really been a whole lot of conflict. And so there's all of these planets in the system that are contributing to the Republic that don't feel like, why are we doing that? Like, what are the Jedi doing for us? They're not doing anything for us, and that's what that's all coming about. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I learned a little bit about that after our last episode as well. So that's what's going on there. And the last thing I'll say about the Great Hyperspace Disaster is it was not a random thing. The Jedi High Republic story initiative, there's 3 phases to it. At the end of the first phase, it was actually discovered that they're not a race, but there's this coalition of races that call themselves the Nihil. And they are, now, I actually don't know if they're related to this expansionist group, actually, now that I'm talking out loud about it. But they're kind of the same thing. They were a bunch of planets that they formed a coalition, feeling that that being part of the Republic and the Jedi, it didn't help them. And in fact, it was holding back their societies. And so they were the ones that destroyed this this transport ship in hyperspace, hoping to diminish the role of the Jedi in the galaxy. Saying like they're not that great. Like, look, they couldn't stop this. Also, yeah. So that's kind of what the whole.
It was a conspiracy, and they actually like caused this accident. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly, and that's what
the
entire
was the mystery that's unraveled in this trilogy or this book. I'm guessing, right?
And this 3-act High Republic storyline is like the first. The first phase set it all up. The second phase was revealing that the Nihil, this coalition of planets, were against the Jedi. And then the third and final act of this 3-phase initiative is the war against the Nihil.
Got it. It's 3 books. 3 books?
No. It's hundreds of books. This is what they've been doing.
100 books?
Yes.
What?
There's comic books. There's junior novels, and there's actual novels.
But they can't be 100. When did they start this thing?
This started in like 2017, 2018.
Okay, so yeah, they've just been cranking them out, cranking out the content. Okay,
exactly.
Well, there you go.
So I also feel like, though, the point that the Acolyte coming out now, like it's all part of this, and this is kind of like their end game, right? Like, anyway, okay. Yeah. So the other big thing that I wanted to talk about there was that yes, so this planet. So what we can assume is that this planet got destroyed. The reason it's lifeless is because of what happened in the Great Hyperspace Disaster.
It wasn't lifeless before.
Well, it can't be, because there's all of this ancient things on this planet, right? Like when we meet the witches, they're in a giant fortress, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay,
right.
Yeah, so.
And I didn't actually write this down in my notes, but in the establishing shot of this episode, when the Star Wars logo ends and it's open, the first thing we see is an establishing shot of the planet, and it says Brendok 16 years ago. It also shows what looks like the Jedi Stonehenge. This is something that we saw in The Mandalorian on the planet. What was this planet? You were on this planet when we were at the Old Republic. Tython.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
So we saw that in The Mandalorian when Ahsoka told Din Djarin to take Grogu and place him in the Jedi Shrine so that he can reach out and try and communicate with the Jedi who can assist him. He took him to this, like, it was like this rock thing, right? Where there was all of these rocks kind of coming out in a 75-degree angle with a centerpiece in the middle, and he put Grogu on there. Anyways, in the establishing shot of this episode, we see something very similar to that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Still there? Oh, he probably had his Xbox control problem. It's got to wiggle.
No, I switched that up. I went to a wired controller so that we don't have it this time, but I just dropped my controller so my microphone disconnected. That's what. Full disclosure's sake.
At least I know it's always like, well, it's always a 5-second lull that I always know you're going to come back now with random Xbox controller issues.
So they say that they're there because there's not supposed to be life on this planet since it was cataloged 100 years ago during the Great Hyperspace Disaster, but now there is life, and they suspect that there's a vergence in the Force there.
Okay, so sorry, to confirm, it was cataloged before this hyperspace accident as not having life.
It was, well, as far as the line of dialogue is that 100 years ago, after the hyperspace disaster, this planet was cataloged as lifeless.
Got it. But there obviously was somebody built these things before then.
Well,
And
that's
it-
kind of that's what I was getting to was, okay, if this planet had a vergence in the Force, like I don't think these things just show up. And I think having the establishing shot showing that there was some sort of like Jedi Stonehenge shows that
it
there
means
was
that, yeah, the
always
vergence always
been a
been there.
vergence on the Force. But if this is the case, the Jedi wouldn't have just left it, even if it got all life on this planet got destroyed during the great hyperspace. I can't see the Jedi would just like, well, there's a Force divergence here, but let's just forget about it. You know what I don't know if I'm able to.
That's why I was talking about 100 years, because we should know the great hyperspace disaster was a certain amount of years before that scene, right? The 60 years. So how many years was it? Do you know? Or
it was, according to the show, it was 100 years before this episode, and this episode is 130 years before BBY.
Okay, so sorry, BBY. So, I thought this was. Oh yeah. The Acolyte is
100 years before Phantom Menace, 130 before A New Hope.
Yeah, and so it was considered lifeless 200 years before Phantom Menace, right?
Yes, 100 years before this show.
And so, but it was scanned after the like what. It's the same time as the hyperspace disaster. I'm trying to figure out how is that in the scanning of the planet? How are they linked?
Okay, well, what I think happened was there was the great hyperspace disaster, and so I think what would have happened would have been because they don't know when these things are the debris from this explosion. They don't know when or where they're emerging.
It triggered an investigation of different star systems, and then
exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. So while they were looking, they saw this planet, and it was lifeless. So they just kept moving on. So I'm taking from this myself. This is my own theorizing, and I'm thinking that this was maybe a Sith-controlled planet, and that's why the Jedi weren't aware of the Force Vergence because if the Jedi knew there was a Force Vergence there, and the great hyperspace disaster happened, and the planet got hit by a piece of debris that's destroyed all life on the planet, the Force divergence would still be on that planet despite everything on it being destroyed. And we don't really know exactly what a Force divergence is, except that it's a nexus.
It's a vergence, not a divergence. Vergence.
Yes, it's a covalence of very strong Force energies. I mean, the other time we've heard this phrase in the movies was in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, after they came back from Tatooine and Qui-Gon Jinn requested an audience with the Jedi Master High Council to say, look, I was on Tatooine, we were attacked by a Sith, and I found this boy who is a vergence in the Force. And the line of dialogue...
Anakin was basically is a vergence himself, which is fascinating.
Yeah, but they're like, around this boy? To them, like, that had never been heard of before. Vergence has always been specific to a location, a place, not a being. And that's what made Anakin such a big deal.
Well, my sense is that planet, is it called Brandok? What's it called?
Brandok, yes.
Yeah, Brandok is like, it was probably just, it was, the Republic kind of lost track of it, or maybe they never knew about it. And so it's always been, and because it's basically in the Outer Rim, right? Is that kind of where it is? Or
that's a good location. I actually don't know.
I think it's pretty much around that area, right? So they just didn't know about it because it was just not in their territory, and so then they eventually I guess they found it. Now, how did they find it? Because what drew them there?
That's a good question.
Why did they eventually launch that 7-week expedition?
That's we don't know how that.
We don't know.
Actually,
all they knew is 100 years ago there's nothing there, and it was lifeless. But are we also to assume that the vergence or something caused all this life to suddenly explode? I think they mentioned that. I think they said the vergence might have been responsible for all this life showing up. Didn't they say something along those lines?
That's why they're there. They're trying to figure out, like, is all of this life here because of the vergence
maybe
in the
they
Force?
Were just doing scannings, and then they were like, holy cow, there's all this life here all of a sudden. So maybe it was just some Joe Blow scanning company. And then the Jedi like, that's weird. We better check that out. And they're like, holy cow, there's a vergence here.
Yes, and the line of dialogue is that they are looking for the vergence to explain how there is life on the planet.
Okay, yes. They just think there is a vergence. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's also so yes. So I mentioned about the Phantom Menace, and there's no I don't have any. I did not research this to back this up, but it's also stated that Dagobah is a vergence in the Force, like the Dark Side Cave. That is a vergence in the Force. So yes, so that
I think
is
we've
all
talked
there.
about that before. Yeah.
The one thing I'm going to add, though, about backing up my theory that the Jedi did not know about this planet and that it was the Sith, is that these witches are here and they're there to hide. They left wherever they came from because they wanted to practice their witch magic with the thread, and no one in the galaxy, as Republic law, only the Jedi are allowed to use the Force. So the witches are there hiding. And so how did they find it? Right?
Yeah.
Like someone put them like, hey, you guys can go here and you're going to be safe and you don't need to worry about it. And so I would suspect that that's the Sith.
Yeah. Like, are the witches? Because the witches, I think, like, it's implied. Like, I thought it was implied that it's like generations of these witches have been hanging out. Is that like so? Maybe they're hundreds of years. Like the society itself is hundreds of years old. Is that
the society itself? I don't know, but it is established that they are new to this planet. That
their society themselves has been ongoing, and they've just been passing along their witchcraft to other witches over centuries.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
and so the Jedi are aware of this. Like the Jedi are aware of the Night Sisters, right? The coven of witches that use the Force that we've seen in the Clone Wars.
Well, they seem
and we saw them in
these type of witches too. Like they weren't super alien. They were like, oh, we've never seen witches like this before.
That's true, but they also didn't know about them because in Dar's entire argument with Saul, where like Saul's like they're using these kids. Like I think the kids are in danger, and she's like, there's lots of different cultures that use ceremonial markings. That does not mean that they're evil. So the Jedi don't know anything about this.
Well, but that specific group of witches. But it seemed to be like they are aware of different types of witches around the galaxy.
Well, because when the line says, after in this episode, when Saul finds them and comes back and says, hey, I found all of these witches, Torben right away goes, Night Sisters. And Master Andar says, no, it can't be Night Sisters because Night Sisters do not teach the children how to use the Force.
Got it.
And so that's how they make the distinction there.
So witches are just, they probably only know about the Night Sisters then. Okay, got it. Anyway, when I was getting back to why, if they're hundreds of years old, I'm wondering if over those hundreds of years, this sect of witches, this coven of witches, if they've had interminglings or whatever, they've had contact with Sith at various times. Maybe they weren't even aware they're Sith. Who knows, right? Is the Sith...
Exactly.
I guess we'll have to find out what is the Sith story
look at this Khmer guy.
to Phantom Menace, right?
Look at this Khmer guy. I mean, if he is Sith, right, he doesn't come across as necessarily such a bad guy, right? Like, aside from killing everybody, right?
Yeah, no, I think we've established that he's not confirmed Sith.
Right? So, okay, well, this is kind of... I'm going to wrap up this episode with my giant theory going into episode 8, and I haven't heard...
Sounds good.
This theory, I am not stealing from anybody else. This is my theory, and this kind of ties into that. So
we'll let you move us along, and then we'll get to the theory at the end. So yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a bunch of scenes of the Jedi establishing why they're there, that Torben wants to go home, Saul thinks they're on an important mission, blah, blah, blah. So we get to the next scene. They split up, and Saul goes off on his own, and that's when he comes across the Bunta tree that we saw in the first episode, and he first sees the two twin girls. I will point out, I thought there was some pretty cool foreshadowing that I caught on my rewatch of the episode, as when Saul is there and he hears the girls and he comes out into the field, there's two of those little butterfly creatures, and as Saul comes out, the two butterfly creatures that are together, they end up like separating and going their different ways. So I just thought that was a cool little bit of visual foreshadowing. I always enjoy stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he sees the two girls, and now this is the first solid I had to go back and watch episode 3, and this is the first example of the Rashomon storytelling, because when Saul is watching the girls, and then the mother Coral, she comes out and she chastises them for like, it's not safe for you girls to be out here, you got to get home. As Saul is watching it, it's very different than the perspective we got in the third episode. Because we got that scene with the two girls and they're sitting there, they're talking with the butterfly. The one girl is playing with the butterfly. Then May grabs it and she starts to like crush it using the Force to demonstrate that she's more potentially evil and dark side. And then the mother Coral comes out and she's like, you girls shouldn't be out here. It's not safe. And in that version, she stands up and she seems a lot not so harsh and angry. But when we get it from Saul's perspective, when you rewatch, there is a difference. Her body language is different. The way that she stands over the girls are different. And the words that she says are actually different. So that's an example of the Rashomon storytelling where we're seeing the same event, but it's different depending on which perspective we're getting here.
Yeah, with like different words and stuff like that. Yeah. That's why they say eyewitness accounts aren't super valid in court. Because people always remember things totally different. Well, not totally different, but there's a lot of difference from what really happened.
Well, and there's validity in it. I mean, hey, like I think that anybody you can. They always say there's their side, there's my side, and there's the truth. Because I think that's valid through all courts of life. Like everybody has different perspectives and different experiences that informs them. And I think that is a good theme throughout life, is that just because it's your truth doesn't necessarily make it someone else's truth, because it is all just a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah. Probably a good way to have a justice system so that you're not erroneously throwing people into jail.
Yeah. So Saul sees them, and then so that's when he goes back. He informs his Jedi companions that he saw these two children that they were using the Force. They're not alone here. Right away, he seems very like he really wants to help these girls. And so that's when they decide that they are going to go and check out the situation. Right away, Indara doesn't really want to do it. She wants to no, we need to contact the council, see what's going on here, inform them.
Well, I must say, since you brought her up, and probably another reason why, I mean, it was the best episode for many reasons, but Carrie-Anne Moss was in it, so that was great. We got more of her. I always loved to watch her.
Yes, she was great. I actually really enjoyed her in this. She came across a lot different in this episode, a lot more level head. I kind of got almost like a sinister kind of vibe from her in that first episode.
Yeah,
and
that's the Rashomon effect, right? That's how she comes across, right?
Because it's from their perspective, absolutely. So they go there and so Saul, meanwhile, he's like, no, we can't wait to hear back from the council. He's like, because he followed them back after he saw them in the forest, and Mother Coral came out, was like, we got to go back. He followed them back to their fortress, and he broke in, and he saw the last part of he missed the part where Mother Anise is explaining to the girls what the thread is and what it does, and he only gets to see the part where she is attacking them by using force push and asking this. So right away he feels like they're almost abusing the girls, and he overhears something about the ascension ceremony that's happening that night. So he books it back to the Jedi camp, and he's like, we can't wait for the Jedi Council. These girls are in danger. We got to go now. So I don't know exactly why Indara agreed to do it, but she does. So they go back to the compound. I noticed that Torben right away says that, oh, this is an elevator shaft. This must be an old mining facility. So there's your other clue that this thing has been around since before the 100-year-old hyperspace disaster, is that Torben right away recognizes it, and he says it's an old mining facility. So they were mining something on this planet. Could it be Cartosis? Could be. So they confront the witches. This is where I actually thought this was really cool. I feel like this was a visual interpretation of the Jedi mind trick. We see from Torben's perspective what we saw in the third episode, where Mother Anise took over his mind and made his eyes go black, and he falls down to his knees. But we see it from his perspective this time, and it's I thought it was very well done. I thought it was very seductive.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was cool. I mean, it showed, it's because it's the time dilation's super cool because it's like all this. It probably happens in like 5 seconds, but it's him basically going through like minutes of like this interaction with the witch, right?
And to say, yeah,
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 and
absolutely, right?
then is like, I mean, maybe it wasn't because I think it was almost like she was doing it on the side, and then
Because
it just
she's
while she's
outside of what's
talking to
happening in
the
his mind. It's like she's carrying on this conversation with
yeah.
Saul and Endara, and meanwhile she's like doing this mind trick where the line of dialogue is she is
There
Torben,
still was
son
some
of
time
Poppins.
dilation, right? Where I mean, yeah,
Yes,
because it was obviously
yeah,
low, but that's great. That's cool. It just shows there's like to take over somebody's mind like that, you have to spend the time with the person to really break them down. Is what it shows. That's part of the spell, right? And the
yeah,
power. And
right.
yeah, I thought that was cool.
And it shows that she can like cause right away she's like Torben, son of Poppers from the planet Bonadon. But then she uses that to like. But then she's like, so tell me, what is it you really want? I'll give you all of your desires. What is it you want? Tell me so I can give it to you. And that's
Yeah,
he's like, I just want to go home. Excuse me.
yeah.
So yeah. So I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed that. And then yeah, so we saw how that scene plays out. And then Saul suggests that they do the test to see whether the girls could even be Jedi. And they agree to it, and they say, we'll bring the girls to you tomorrow. We'll bring it out to where your party is or whatever, and we'll submit the girls to the test. So then after that, they go back to the ship. It pretty much cuts straight to the next scene where we see this time in the third episode, we saw Osha take the test. This time we get to see May take the test. We know that she was instructed
we
to lie.
We didn't see May take the test in the third episode?
No, we did not
see.
We
okay.
saw Osha take the test. We saw because she comes out and says, like, it's time for you to go in now.
That's all we saw. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was like, this sound like I was, because I think some of it looked familiar and some of it was like, I don't remember seeing any of this or anything like this, right? Okay. Yeah.
In this episode, we got both. We got to see May's test, and then we got to see Osha's test as well. Whereas in that episode 3, we did only get to see Osha's test. And May did exactly what she was supposed to do. Like they say, "What do you see?" And on the screen, we saw a Wampa, and she's like, "Oh, it's a starship." And then she saw, I forget what it was. She's like, so she basically lied. But then they ask her about the Ascension ceremony. And this, she is bluntly honest about it. She says, they ask, well, what is Ascension ceremony? And May says, Mother told me that everyone must walk through fear. Everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny. And obviously, this gets a reaction from Saul and
yeah, it's pretty intense,
right? However, another Rashomon effect here, Johnny D. If you go back and watch the third episode, that is not what the mother Anase explained the Ascension ceremony to be. What she actually explained is Ascension is about walking through fear, about sacrificing a part of yourself for the power of many instead of the power of one.
Oh, so May got it incomplete like a kid would?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Like May just heard about walking through fear and everybody must sacrifice. But that's not at all what it was. But I could see how a child, the words that when you say that to a child, she's going to pick up on fear and she's going to pick up on sacrifice. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that makes sense to me. Yeah, and so they go back. They send the kids back. May failed the test. Osha passed the test, and he wants to use this to take the girl away from the witches and bring it back to Coruscant. Now, it does seem. Do you feel like it was the Force is telling Saul that this girl needs to be his apprentice? Like it was very odd. I'll say it just seemed a little off to me how badly he immediately connected.
Well, they accuse him of that. They go, "This is about you. This is about your feelings." And he's like, and he's defending himself later on. And he's like defending himself, saying, "No, it's best for her." But I mean, And so we don't know what the truth is yet.
I feel like it was the Force, because we've already established, and I brought up it in our
Well,
previous
yeah,
pod,
I
feel like he's much more
I'm trying
like
to travel.
Qui-Gon,
I'm trying to break it down so I can see if. I mean, it makes sense that might be an endpoint. I'm trying to break it down to see if that, how that plays out. To say it's the Force, but I still need to understand. Either way, whether it's because it's best for him or best for her. Why is it best for him? Why is it best for her? Because if it's best for her, it's just his instinct saying she's going to be. It's going to be not good for her if she doesn't get out of here. And that could be the Force telling him that, because your instincts, Force could be the same thing, right?
Right.
But for him, for his what yeah, and maybe that's how the Force does it. Maybe the Force will make the instincts so intense that you're just you become obsessed with it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's valid, and it could be manifesting itself in that way where he is a bit kind of crazy about it, right? And Carrie-Anne Moss is calling him on it, saying, "Whoa, man, step down," right? So yeah, but yes, I think I agree that is a valid theory that the Force has a reason to tell him to get her out of there.
Well, I look at Qui-Gon and I look at Anakin. Qui-Gon felt that Anakin was the chosen one and he had to be trained. He took him to the Jedi Council. The Jedi Council was like, no, we can't train this guy. He's way too attached to his mother and he's too old. Yeah. And then Qui-Gon dies, and it is kind of weird. We're the Jedi well, okay, I guess maybe we should, just because he died, they decided to go back against what
they probably saw and this kid ended up destroying an entire space station on his own.
And they did agree that they felt like he could be the chosen one. They were just afraid. Right?
What's that?
They did agree that he could be the chosen one, but they were just afraid.
Before the Naboo, the Battle of Naboo, or after?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. But I think yeah, I mean, who knows? Yeah, they did change, but I mean, they definitely would have been holy cow, this kid, they probably realized, well, he was kind of lucky, but they're well, that kind of luck is that's intense amount of luck. That's Force luck, right? That he got, where he basically he's supposed to hide there. He ends up just accidentally turning the ship on and flying into the freaking crash landing into the space station, and then
accidentally blowing it up.
Well, he just took exactly.
Yeah, I think he's how do I turn on thrusters? And he flips a switch and it shoots the photon torpedoes.
Yeah, he's well, I guess I'll just do these to try to get myself out of here. Yeah. So they're just holy cow, that's crazy luck. This kid might be the chosen one because the Force basically made him survive and destroy that space station. Right. Yeah.
So I do feel like it could be the Force is the one, but I also have to point out, it's well been established that Jedi Master Saul is very highly influenced by his emotions throughout this entire show, whether it be in flashbacks or in the current timeline. I guess
on his Jedi performance reviews, that was probably one of his things to improve. Gets a little too emotional.
Right?
and needs to enunciate better his English.
So, meanwhile, as they're debating what their next move is, because his daughter, May, or Osha, passed the test to be Jedi trained. Torben, meanwhile, his little thing goes off, and the blood test results have come back. And the blood test results show that not only do they have an M count, they have an unusually high M count. Sorry?
Have they used the term M count before?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was saying, are they going to bring back midichlorians?
No, you're never hearing midichlorians again.
No, but the thing is, they brought it back by making it sound cool by calling them M counts.
Yes.
So when was the time we've heard M counts before?
In live action, it was referring to Grogu's blood in The Mandalorian.
Yes. Grogu would definitely have a pretty high M count.
And all 3 seasons of the Bad Batch, the whole purpose of the Bad Batch television show was them trying to get this one clone called Echo that hung out with the Bad Batch, because she is the only. They didn't know this at the time, but when they clone her blood for some reason is the only clone that can actually transfer Force powers from clone to clone, because for some reason her blood allows for a high M count. But anyway,
sorry, Echo was Echo a female?
Yes, she was a female variant of Boba Fett that was
Jango Fett.
unaltered. Oh, Jango Fett.
Yeah.
She was. There's only 2 unaltered clones of Jango Fett. It's Boba Fett and this Echo character.
Oh,
and
so when
except
they made
that she was a female.
when they made the female version of the clone, that's when the Force starts showing up.
Correct.
Because as Kathleen Kennedy says on her T-shirt that everybody likes to show, the Force is female.
Yes. I mean, Echo never actually used the Force on the show. She did get tested at one point on the show. It wasn't made exactly clear whether she could use the Force or not. But the whole point was that for some reason, Nala Se, the head Geonosian cloning scientist, made her with this ability, and she was trying to hide it from the Empire. I mean, I can't really. It's basically that a lot of what that show was about was all that. So yes, M count is a thing in the Star Wars universe, and it is for here and evermore, I'm sure, replacing the midichlorian.
Well, it just stands for midichlorian count.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that word has become so toxic with some Star Wars fans that they're like, we're just going to call it M count.
Okay.
But that's not also the big thing. There was one other piece of information, and Torben added that the symbionts are exactly the same. And I think it was Saul or Master Indar was like, well, they would be because they're twins. And he's like, no. They are exactly the same, like they're the same person.
Yeah.
Now the symbionts are exactly the same. I would assume the symbionts are how people that are M count high. The symbionts are what allow them to use the Force. I'm guessing. I don't know. It's probably not even important, really.
Sorry, the symbionts, like just people in general with high M count can use the Force, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I don't know. My whole point, I don't know what symbionts are. What the heck are?
Yeah, when do they refer to symbionts?
That's why I'm saying I'm trying to figure out what they are. I feel
don't they use the word symbionts in Aliens?
Well, Venom from Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Venom is a symbiote.
Spider-Man, they call him a symbiote,
right?
That's right.
Where it's
yeah.
But right. What exact is it? Just like a living organism that?
So where do they say it in Acolyte?
The line of dialogue is the girls have a high M count, and their symbionts are exactly the same.
Their symbionts are exactly what the heck are? Yeah, what do you mean they're symbionts?
I don't know.
Okay, that's the first time you've ever heard that, eh? Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard that in Star Wars before.
I'm looking it up. All I'm getting is like Spider-Man stuff. Is this like some made-up thing? Is it like not in like actual biology? Oh, here we go. Here's the Webster Dictionary. Oh, here we go. An organism living in symbiosis. Okay, so what's symbiosis? Can't remember our grade 7 science. Eh?
That was a while ago.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
It was more than 16 years ago.
Symbiosis. Yeah. The living together. I think it's like a parasite, but a little different. The living together in more or less close union of two dissimilar organisms. Okay, so as in parasitism or commensalism.
Okay, I think I can articulate what I think it is, because you're right. Anyone that has a parasite, Force,
but it's different from a parasite, because a parasite where it's like I think symbiosis is the mutual benefit. It's mutually beneficial for both organisms, while parasitism is where it's actually not mutually beneficial. One organism sucking from the other organism. That's what I would call it works.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you're 8 years old. You have a high M count.
Yes.
Meaning you have a high potential with the Force. You don't get discovered. The Jedi don't find you. Nobody finds you. Nobody teaches you how to use the Force. So now you're a 30-year-old person. Your M count is still high, correct? That's not going to change. But you can't tap into the Force. I think the symbionts are what allow the person to tap into the midichlorians in their bloodstream and use the Force. I think as you become a Jedi, when you become a Padawan, I think the training is what allow.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
If you're high in the midichlorians, but you can't use the Force, that means you don't have enough symbiotes.
Well, maybe if I'm to think about the meaning of symbiosis, it means that the symbiont is referring to the midichlorians, because the symbiosis is two organisms, midichlorian and human. That's yeah.
No, that's actually important, and that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So the midichlorians, everyone has midichlorians, but midichlorians are different, and so what they're saying is that the Force that these two girls, they're both. I'm having a hard time articulating, but in my head it makes sense. I think I understand.
Line. What was the line again? Do you have it written down? Because I will tell. Now that I'm regurgitating again all this biology knowledge that I had in grade 7, and through the power of the internet, I might be able to get it from that line. Again.
The only line, I don't have the entire. I just have this.
Okay.
Symbionts are exactly the same.
The symbionts. So that means the midichlorians. There must be some variance in how midichlorians are in different people, and that they're just they're exactly the same. Like, is
right?
it the
same?
So
midichlorians are specific to certain people, and so
they all have different they have different readings. Like some midichlorians are green, or some of them are brown, and they're all green, and they're all frequency 7.7, and they have 10,500. It's the exact same. That's probably what they're saying. That's my guess.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's shocking to them. And that causes
that
Carrie-Anne Moss to go kind of change her tune a bit about how to deal with the situation. I think, if I recall, right?
Yes. Yeah, that is what actually, that's the first time where she kind of gets on board, right? Where she's like, okay, yeah, there's something really strange happening there. Yeah. And that's when and so after this is where we get, I don't know. Torben loses his shit when he hears this guy wants to go home so bad.
Yeah. But he's like virgins, though, because he's actually really into the virgins, though, right?
So he's like, that's what he's like. This is the proof. This is these girls are the virgins.
Yeah,
let's get them. So we can get the hell off of this planet.
Yeah,
and get out of here.
I mean, he's unstable in many different. He's for various reasons, right? He's homesick.
And he is a Padawan.
He's homesick, and he just got
not
screwed.
A fully trained.
Yeah, he got basically mind effed by the witch. He's unstable, and
right. So
that's why
I can see
it made sense. It made sense about why sometimes they have these plot points. I find in some of these shows where it's to get from A to B, it's B to C. You're like, oh, that was so it just didn't work, and it's forced. That was not forced. That was a good buildup of why this guy flips out, right? And which causes this thing to unravel in a really crazy way. So that's why I thought it was
been
the best
here
episode,
for 7 weeks. He's been saying over and over again he wants to go home. He's sick of it. Yeah. And then just a few hours ago, his mind was invaded by this witch who took him over.
Yeah.
Right. So to
when
me,
he snapped, it was great. It was exciting. It was good. Yeah. I mean, it was like I said, this is a good episode, and that was one of the reasons why it was that moment, right?
Now I do want to point out, though, I think he's wrong. I myself don't think that these girls are the virgins in the Force. I think part of the reason they exist, why they were I think that has to do with the virgins.
I think the witches use the virgins to create them.
Yes, right? I don't think he's not I don't think these girls are like Anakin. No, yeah. So I want to point out that I think he's wrong, and that I don't think the girls are the virgins. It's just like you said, I think the witches use the virgins to help create. Yeah. And hopefully we'll get an answer to that next week. The rest of the episode is pretty much action from here on out, because that Torben takes off. Saul jumps on a speeder to chase him. They only have the 2 speeders on the planet, so Kanaka and Master Endor get on board their ship. Saul catches up with Torben when they're outside the fortress, and Torben tells him that the elevators have been disabled. He thinks that they locked the girls inside so that they can't take them. They ascend up to the top. Meanwhile, while that's happening, May is confronting her sister about not wanting her to leave and go with the Jedi. She says, I'm not going to let you go. She locks her in her room. She grabs her sister's notebook, and she sets it on fire using an oil lantern. Now, I rewatched this very specifically because I wanted to see exactly how they played this out. So yes, she grabs the lantern, she sets the notebook on fire, and when the notebook catches on fire, she drops the lantern that is full of oil. And the oil spreads everywhere. It's very clear to see in the episode when you watch it again. And the oil gets covered in the electric console that was used to lock her in her room. Now, I did see someone else talking about this, and I'll buy this. I'll share it. They're saying that because this is an old mining facility that has been there for who knows how long, that it is a closed system and not an open system. So all of the electronics, all of the consoles, they're all connected to each other. So we get to the end of the episode and the fire expands and things start exploding, it's because that oil has caught the electrics on fire, all the wiring and everything, and it is going from console to console throughout this mining facility that are in.
That's the problem with old stuff on the Outer Rim, is that you're on the Outer Rim, so you just can't get the inspectors in to make sure everything's up to code. So it was a super dangerous place to live in.
So while that's going on, exactly, right? That's why we gotta have proper safety protocols.
That's why the Republic, need to get out.
So while this is happening, Torben and Saul are confronting Mother Anissa and Kirill, and they have this conversation. He's saying that he wants to take the girl, but everyone's tensions are high. Mother Anissa says, someday these noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy. Now, she's not wrong. That's actually exactly what happened. Now, whether she's just randomly guessing or
did she say almost or will?
Will.
Oh, well, she was wrong because it didn't completely destroy everybody.
Well, it did, but they didn't realize Luke was going to be able to become a Jedi as well. I guess Yoda was still alive, but okay.
She's kind of right.
But still.
He is kind of right. They got pretty darn close.
So, okay, and I wrote this down because I wanted to have this exactly clear, because now this is maybe an issue. I'll talk it through with Jedi Master Johnny D here and see where we come out through on this. So she says that line where they're all going to destroy. At this point, May appears in a hallway, very distraught. She's screaming for help because she had trapped her sister in the bedroom and started this fire, and the fire had spread, so she's worried that her sister is going to burn to death. Saul sees her, but does not realize that it's May. He thinks it's Osha.
Oh, he always makes
Now, the exact chain of events is May shows up, screams. After that, Mother Kirill, the Zebrak witch, the one that looks like Darth Maul but is yellow instead of red, she raises her staff. She's the first to enter a fighting position. She raises her staff. After she raises her staff, Padawan Torben ignites his lightsaber. After the staff gets raised and the lightsaber is ignited, Mother Anissa screams no and begins to transform into this black smoke. As she slowly transforms, it goes into a slow motion shot. She slowly starts transforming into this black smoke. We get a shot of Jedi Master Saul, looking like, what the hell is happening right now? And he looks over at what he thinks is Osha, but it's May. Then we get the camera shot of May, and she also begins transforming into this black smoke, like she's going to disappear. Mm-hmm. That is when Saul, when he sees the girl is in danger, pulls out the lightsaber and stabs Mother Anissa in the chest, which stops her transformation and kills her. And she manages to say just before she dies, she chose to be with the Jedi, and I was going to let her go. So in that moment, Saul realizes the mistake that he made. Now,
well, yeah. I mean, the thing is that when you're around cops, you got to act chill. You do not turn into black force, like black clouds, when you're around cops, because they're going to shoot you. Because they're on it.
Yes.
So I was like, why did you do that? And because Saul basically was a cop and he acted like a cop. He basically went into kill mode because they're trained to go into kill mode, right? And he basically took her down.
So for me, this whole situation escalated. It should never have escalated to this point, but it did.
It did, yeah.
But the mistake was not solved. Right? From my perspective, is one, I don't even know what Mother Anissa was trying to do, and she should have communicated first that she was going to let the girl go.
Around cops, and you just got to be chill around cops. That's everybody should know.
But I do feel, because she felt her daughter was in danger at that point, she didn't have the time to explain. She had to take action. So,
yeah, it was a tragic event.
Tragic event,
or whatever sequence of events. And yes,
so
that's so it wasn't just the fire. I'd say a lot of people were like criticizing the fire, and you were right to correct me early on, Newhouse, that there was more to obviously that came in with the destruction than just that little fire. Although the fire was bad because of the bad electrical setup. Right?
Yes. So after Anissa died, she finds out, and Saul realizes his mistake. Then there's a whole bunch of archers. The witches they start shooting at them. Jedi Master Torben is whipping his lightsaber around, playing defense. Meanwhile, Mother Kirill starts attacking Saul, and he takes it. She's like beating the crap out of it. He's not raising his lightsaber. He's not stopping her. It's like he's taking
penance quite shocked
for the mistake. And she even she yells she's like, "Fight me!" And he's just like, "No." Right?
Yeah.
But then the explosion happens where the fire has spread. It's been going through, and now there's a giant explosion. And that is when I feel like Master Saul is like, okay, that's when he pulls out his lightsaber. He cuts the staff in half so that he can't be attacked by her, but he immediately turns the lightsaber off. But he's like, hey, we got more important things we got to get these girls. We got to get as many people out of here as we can. Like, he's like, okay, we're in like flight mode now, right?
Yeah.
And then Mother Kirill, she says, I forget what she says, but then she transforms into this black smoke, and we don't see her again for the rest of the episode. She does this weird black smoke thing. She disappears into nowhere. You do hear her. She then says, "You shouldn't have brought him." And Torben says, "I've fortified my mind. You're not going to be able to take over me this time." And she says, "Not you." And this is when we see Master Tanaka, the Wookiee Jedi Master. And he has been taken over by these witches at this point, and they get into a big fight. This is where we see the scars that Master Torben has on his face. They're in the middle of the fight, and at one point, Tanaka uses the Force to pull Jedi Torben into his hand, into his claws, and then he smashes his face into the wall. But you can tell, I watched this very carefully. The actual scars on his cheek and above his eyes do come from Master Tanaka's claws from when he gets pulled into it using the Force. Now, I will say, because we saw Master Tanaka when we saw Cal Naka, when we saw him at the start of episode 4, like we had established before, the Jedi had stationed him on that planet, but no one had heard from him in over a year. We see that he's kind of like become a hermit. He's secluded. He has all sorts of the Tai Chi symbols and all of that. But there's one other thing from the Star Wars universe that it was first brought up in the Old Republic, and it has been canonized in other things, is that, have you ever heard of the Wookiee Mad Claw?
I have. That name sounds familiar. You have to fill me in more.
It's not a person. Mad Claw is a term used by the Wookiees of Kashyyyk to mark a dishonored member of their community.
Oh, then they might have mentioned it in KOTOR 1.
They mentioned it in KOTOR, and they also, the first actual reference of this Mad Claw was in the Heir to the Empire, the Timothy Zahn trilogy from the early 90s that introduced Thrawn. Wookiee culture placed a high value on the use of their claws for peaceful, productive reasons only.
Yes.
Any Wookiee who lashes out against another Wookiee or any other living being with their claws are deemed to be a Mad Claw.
Yes.
It is a grave dishonor since Wookiees viewed the use of their claws for anything other than tools as feral, and mad claws are usually sent into exile.
Yes, and that's what happened to. I'll just give a little story about KOTOR if I can recall, but I forget what is the name of the Wookiee you find. But yeah, he was banished because his dad was the chief, and the brother I think was framed the Wookiee companion that you have, Zalbar. Yes, so his brother framed him, and so then he used his claws on his brother because he pissed him off so much. And then he was banished, and then the brother basically took over. I think the Wookiees and started cutting deals with the Zerga Corporation, who would then enslave Wookiees, and the Sith. So that's when you go back to basically clear Zabrax. What's his name? Zalbar. Zalbar's name.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow.
Great stuff in that KOTOR game. That was definitely one of them. That's story.
Yeah, man, like that. Yeah. I was actually going to bring that all up, but wow, color me impressed, Jedi Master Johnny D.
As I said at the start of this whole series, this is one of my favorite games. So,
right,
played it 3 times, or probably 4 times now.
So because he used, even though he was being used by the witches, I still think that there is shame in the Wookiee culture for using his claws. So that has part to do with the reason why he was in seclusion at the start of that 4th episode, but also because of what happens next, where they finally managed to disarm Cal Naka, but he's still too strong. But that is when Jedi Master Indara shows up, and she somehow is able to go into his mind and force the witches out of his mind.
Yes, now that was really cool when she does that. Oh, okay, the other cool, right before that was one of my favorite scenes and lines, was when Saul is like grabbing Cal Naka and he screams, this is why this guy is such a great actor. His line is like, Cal Naka, no! I was like, this is awesome. This is top tier television acting right here. Right?
Yes.
And then Carrie-Anne Moss's character shows up and does the cool like counter thing. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Jedi's got some game here too, right? With this and it's interesting, it's the female who's able to kind of counter the other females. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, yes. You continue on because this is definitely some of the best scenes of the show.
My initial reaction was that whatever she did is what killed all of those witches, but I'm not so sure.
She was basically like she got this weird like telepathic kind of like just tug of war, right? Where you have no choice. It's like you're gonna die or they're gonna die. That's what it came down to, right? Where they're basically
did they die or did they? I think it's possible that they just lost their consciousness, but they weren't able to be saved before the entire building blew up. Like my whole point was, I'm not sure.
Just knocked them out and then
they all died.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if it was them getting pushed out of Cal Naka's mind that caused them to die, or if they just lost consciousness.
They got knocked out and then they asphyxiated. Yeah, that could be it too.
Right? Because that also goes into with the big reveal at the end of the episode is that the one character who all along was like, we should leave these witches alone. We got to do this by the book. Let's contact the Jedi Council. Like, she was pretty much against all of this. And at the end of the episode, the big reveal is that it was her idea to lie to the Jedi Council and say that May started the fire and that killed everybody.
Oh, after all that stuff had happened. Yeah. Well, obviously she changed her mind for something.
So
just
my first watch, I felt that was a little more sinister than maybe I do now, where she was doing that to cover herself. The fact that she had possibly killed 50 individuals while trying to rescue the one. But now maybe I'm making more of a big deal out of that than I thought it was.
Yeah, what other reason would she have to cover it up, right? Does she not trust the council? This is some bad stuff that we just discovered. That I know other council members might exploit this, right?
I think it has more
That's
to
the
do
only
with
motivation
the
I can think of.
politics.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's more of like the same reason that this Master Vanestra Rowe is trying to hide everything from the Council is because that the Jedi have their political enemies. They're afraid that anything that makes the Jedi look bad is going to be used against them.
Yeah. So
And
it's either to
right,
cover her butt for killing him, but then it comes down to whether she killed him or not. And then now I was thinking because we were talking this through now, I'm thinking about, well, what do we know now about telepathic warfare that happens with force powers, right? Because I mean, of course, we obviously know a lot of it when we watch X-Men cartoons or read X-Men comics. But in Star Wars, this concept of telepathic battle, where you have people doing the mind control. I mean, you've done the mind control, which is very, very simple when you've seen it the first times when Obi-Wan does it. But like
right.
these telepathic battles that we saw, I'm trying to think, have we ever seen the scope of that kind of battle?
Not really, because is it not Obi-Wan Kenobi who explains in A New Hope that the Jedi mind trick only works against the weak-minded? Or is that
Yes,
something in
the mind trick. Yeah, but this is different.
right?
This is different types of
But this is
telepathic
different.
stuff.
That's why I think it took like all of the witches that they had to be able to control. So it's not a mind trick. It is a total
It's mind
possession.
control. It's mind control, right? So it's a whole
Yeah.
different level.
And
Yeah.
so
So
yeah,
I don't
we've
think
never
we've
really
seen. Yeah, we haven't really seen. I mean, other than what I mean, really, what Emperor did was a lot of kind of subtle mind. Well, he just it was like mind protection, right? So anyway, yeah. So there's interesting these rules of the game that we're kind of learning more and more about, right? But and so the telepathic stuff is kind of new territory. So yeah, so we'll have to kind of hear more or see more of it in action to go. Did they die? Did they get knocked out? I'll go with that. They got knocked out. I'll go with that because that would make more
they
sense.
knocked out
Because the
and
kill shot
I
would be
still think
pretty
they died.
intense.
I think they all
Yeah, I think a kill shot
right?
would be just too
And-
much. That's too OP. I think for that power.
And out of everything that happened on that planet, that is probably like the most like devastating if she actually killed all of them. So I don't think that really works out.
I
Whereas
think
when
she
this
knocked
show
him out.
started,
I'm going that
she
with
was
that
the only one that really she didn't really like she's the only one that really wasn't affected by what happened on this planet because she was the only one who was against everything that happened pretty much, right? Like when the show started, like we know that Kalnaka's been in seclusion. We know that Torben has been doing the Vash cow and has been in meditation and not talked to anyone for 10 years. And Saul is just like hanging out at the
well, I mean,
Jedi
he's still going. He's actually the most integrated. Carrie-Anne Moss's character is, I mean, I assume she's still working when she was on that bar where she got killed. So yeah, I mean, I think her. Yeah, I mean, Saul's just kept it together by keeping working, but he's obviously got demons going on with him.
Yeah.
Well, Carrie-Anne Moss's character. Yeah, I don't know if what kind of guilt she's. We haven't seen that much of her, right?
And we also don't know how much Saul is out in the field very much because anytime in both of these episodes, he has to be asked to be put on both of these missions.
Oh,
he's not included on them, right?
Yeah.
He's just teaching younglings at the academy.
Yeah,
when the show starts.
He's probably been demoted because of some of his problems that he's probably shown with his mental stability. Is my guess.
Well, I also think that there's also the possibility of a second or third or more seasons, but I still think there's other things that have happened because it doesn't make sense. Why was Torben only in meditation for the last 10 years instead of 16 years, right?
Yes.
I think something else happened at some point, maybe not even related at all to what we're seeing in the Acolyte. Right? I mean, that's just kind of how I worked out in my mind. Like, it didn't make sense to me that, well, why would if he was that affected by it, why wouldn't he have been in meditation for 16 years? Why is it only 10, right? Like, and that's the one thing I can say that I feel confident about this show is I don't think there's any cheats. I think everything is very well thought out, even if it doesn't really make sense to us now. I do feel like anytime that we've really dug into it, there is logic behind these decisions and that it has been thought out. So that's just kind of my own gut feeling on that.
At this point, I mean, this episode I thought was I can't recall. It made me not even remember the other episodes because I was like, well, this one seems to be whatever. I mean, it was all building up to this, right? So at this point, I was like, yes, that episode, it made sense. The story makes sense right now. It was a good episode. So, definitely I was getting a little bored of the episode before, and now I was still like, well, I'll wait and see what happens. But now I'm excited for the next episode. And I'll be excited actually for another season, as long as the next episode isn't a total, which it won't be. I mean, I think the show has been good about making sure they set proper moods, and they don't like, they execute with good. It's good music. Like, I always thought the music's been pretty good. So
Yes.
I think there'll be something of interest that's going to happen. We'll see in the last episode. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't really have much more to say about this episode. So, like I say, there is only
Yeah,
one
well, let's go to
episode
the
left.
grand theory. If you're done on this one.
Well, okay, this is where the likelihood of this happening is very not likely. But going all the way back to when this show was announced and released, it was supposed to be about showing how the Sith and what they were doing and how they were involved in the events leading up to the fall of the Jedi and the Phantom Menace and all of that. And up to this point, like, we have one character that might be Sith, might not. We don't even know. Like, really, the Sith, there's all these things happening in the show where the Sith could be involved, but the show hasn't told us that yet up to this point. Now, to get back into, like, there has to be a reason that this show exists. There has to be a point to it, right? There had to be, when Leslie Headland had the idea and pitched it to Lucasfilm and was like, yeah, okay, this is good.
Was it Headland came up with the idea with this show?
Yes.
Okay, but but the High Republic was brought up by somebody else. The whole concept of doing High Republic stories and whatnot, right?
Yeah, they had a whole story group of 10 different writers that worked on this High Republic concept for 2 years before anything was even released. So yeah, but I don't think she was a part of that. But my point being is, with what they have teased so far, what I think is happening. Okay, and I need to go back to episode 2, the conversation between Palpatine and Anakin in the Opera House, when he says, "Have I ever told you the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" Now, while I'm doing that, are you able to bring up that script, John ED, quickly?
The actual script?
That scene? Because does he or does he not say that Master Plagueis had figured out how to manipulate midichlorians to create life? He says that he did that, right?
So how do you spell Plagueis? Oh, here we go.
P-L-A-G.
Here we go. I got the script right here. Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? So it's so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. Okay, so what
So he said he could. Cool. Well, that's the big one that I want to know specifically. Was he saying he was trying to manipulate, or he was able
so powerful and so wise he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life? He had such a knowledge of the dark side that he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying. That seems like a total hook for Anakin, though, in that one.
Yes. Okay. So, but that.
Okay, here Anakin says what happened to him. And the next line. Is you ready for the next line?
Yeah.
He became so powerful, the only thing he was afraid of was losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew, that his apprentice killed him in his sleep. Smiles, in brackets. Plagueis never saw it coming. It's ironic he could save others from death, but not himself. So Plagueis taught probably Palpatine, and Palpatine took him out.
Okay.
That's my guess.
So we
implied by that.
So taking Palpatine at his word, we know that Plagueis was able to create life, right?
Yes.
So now we know Palpatine, his whole thing, like, was creating the Death Star and taking over the universe, but he also was himself didn't want to die. His whole thing was trying to pass on his essence. Like, my point being is, I feel like what they've been doing lately with all of the Mandalorian and all of they're trying to kind of fill in the gaps between what we see in episode 6 and what we saw in episode 9. And so what they have established since they've taken over is that Palpatine, with his Project Necromancer, right? This was something that's been referenced in the Star Wars Battlefront video games. It's been referenced in The Mandalorian. It's been referenced in the comic books, is that he was trying to transfer his essence into a clone.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole reason why they're going after Grogu.
Yeah.
Because when he transfers his essence, it's too powerful and it deteriorates the clone bodies. And so what he's trying to do in episode 9 is he wants to take over Rey's body, because Rey is a Palpatine. She has some of his DNA in her. So he's figuring that he can transfer his essence into her. But during the final confrontation, when Rey is with Kylo, he discovers that they're a Force dyad and that he was able to use their power, because there's the scene where you are a Force dyad and he's holding up his hand and his fingers are regenerating as he's siphoning their power. So at that point, he's like, I don't need a clone body no more. What I need to do is I need to take over these guys so that I can be the Force dyad. Okay.
Yeah. 2 people at once. Yeah. I think that was what he was going to do.
Well, that's what a Force dyad is you have to, there has to be a dyad, there has to be 2 people involved.
Oh,
okay.
Boy. That'd be tricky. Tricky to run those 2 bodies at once. I guess the Emperor could pull it
off. And so it has also been established in non-movie stuff that Palpatine and Plagueis had also tried to create their own Force dyad, but it was never able to work. They were never able to create the dyad, and that's why Palpatine gave up on the whole dyad thing and started focusing his efforts on making a clone body that could handle the Force essence and not deteriorate. My point being is what I think is going on here. What I think is going on is, because everyone says, well, Khmer can't be Plagueis because Plagueis was a Bith. He's a species. You see one of the species in episode 4 in the cantina. They're a very large-headed species, and they're like, well, it would go against continuity that has been established. I mean, technically, it hasn't been established because Lucasfilm doesn't recognize Darth Plagueis as canon anymore because it was released before. But what I think is going on is
Darth Plagueis. No, but he was mentioned in the movies. He's got to be canon because he was mentioned in the movies.
Yeah, but no, it's the race. His race was never mentioned.
Yes,
what
that
species
would make sense. They can retcon that one. Yeah.
Right, but so what I think they're doing is I still think they're keeping that Plagueis was a Bith, but I think he figured out how to transfer his essence, and his essence is in Khmer.
So you think Khmer? Okay, so you think Khmer might be Plagueis still?
Okay. I want to go back to this now. They showed that Bunta tree in this episode again, right? Remember the Bunta tree, the big yellow tree where we first met the twins in episode 3, and where Saul is watching them, where they're playing with the butterfly.
Yeah.
And in the second episode, when May poisons Osha, where does she get the poison? Do you remember? She goes to the apothecary on that planet where Khmer is, right?
Uh-huh.
And he makes that poison for her, and he explains to her that this poison is from the Bunta tree from where you're from. So how would Khmer have the bark? And they even mention in that 3rd episode that the bark of the Bunta tree is poisonous, right? So they mention it then, and then Khmer mentions that he made this poison for her to use on Torben from the Bunta tree from her home planet. So Khmer knows all this stuff about the twins. Like, how does he know all that? How does he know what happened on the planet? How does he know? How does Khmer have bark from the Bunta tree on that planet where all that shit happened 16 years ago, unless he was there?
Yeah.
Right? But he's obviously so young. He even says in episode 6, he's like, "Oh, I was a Jedi a long time ago."
Oh,
and she's like, "Well, I've never heard of it." He's like, "Well, it was a really long time ago." But this dude is like not that much older than her.
Yeah, you got some good evidence to back up this theory that you're brewing up here, Newhouse.
I'm thinking that Plagueis has already figured out how to do the body transfer. Plagueis is actually in Mother Kirill. All that stuff that's happening 16 years ago, the Zebrak, the one that's like, use your anger.
That's my guess.
Use the one that's being aggressive and forcing all of this stuff to happen, and the one who disappears before everybody else dies.
Right? That's Plagueis. Yeah. So that's just Plagueis.
Yeah. I think it's Plagueis.
Yeah.
And now, after what happened on that planet, whenever the Mother Kirill left, he transferred his essence into Khmer now. And I do think whoever Khmer was, he was I think that Master Venera Rowe, the green bald chick with the whip, I think she was Khmer's master, and that he failed or whatever, but he was powerful in the Force. And so when Plagueis needed to abandon the Mother Kirill body and go into a new body, he found this guy, right?
Yeah,
This guy was strong, and so he took over him.
Yeah,
right.
Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Yeah, and you said you got this. This is you haven't read this.
This is all me. Nobody. I'm
Master
flabbergasted.
Newhouse special.
This is a Master Newhouse
Certified
special.
Trademarked.
Because it all has to tie in. Because otherwise, what was the whole point of this whole Khmer thing? Aside from like, well, we need to have a bad guy that can like use a lightsaber and kill a bunch of people, like to have some act. Like, it could be that, but
it's a good theory. That's a good theory. And the thing is, now that I know it's probably going to be multiple seasons, they can still bring in Palpatine as his apprentice once they establish that, right? They can do the whole Palpatine story.
Yeah, and then that way you won't also piss off the OG fans who are like, well, Plagueis was a Biff. He can't be this, like, oh, this is so.
Who would you cast? Who would you cast as the young Palpatine as they show up? Nobody, or is there somebody? I don't know.
No, you know who I'd cast? You know who I cast?
Who?
And I'm going because as soon as you ask me, is a young Palpatine, and you're asking me not like a young Emperor Palpatine, but the young Senator Palpatine that we met in Naboo, right?
Oh, the young apprentice, because he could be like doing lightsaber stuff before he even becomes a senator, right? You
know who it is? The lead from The Bear. I don't know what the actor's name, but that show, The Bear, that guy.
Yeah.
He's even got like the side profile with the chin and the neck. 100%, man. That's your young Palpatine right here. You cast that guy.
Yeah, that's a good choice. You might be too successful in The Bear to want to get caught in the Star Wars, but you never know. I mean, Ewan McGregor was. Anyway, that's good. Yes, great content there, Newhouse, and great idea on the casting. So, does that wrap up your theory then?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. My Khmer is actually Plagueis.
All right, well, good.
And that's the relevant. That's why the show exists.
I think that's a good time to wrap up the Acolyte topic. But is there any other topics of interest you want to bring up or news, Newhouse, for us?
Well, Master Johnny D, did you happen to see the new trailer that dropped today?
I heard that there was a Captain America teaser. Is that right?
No, it's an actual 2-minute trailer for Captain America: Brave New World drop, and the big reveal at the end of the trailer, spoilers, is that Harrison Ford's character Thaddeus Ross will be the Red Hulk in this movie.
Oh, he's going to be so Thaddeus Ross is General Ross?
Yes, because William Hurt passed away in real life, so they recast Harrison Ford.
Does Harrison Ford have a mustache?
No, because the first line of the trailer is, "I'm still getting used to you without the mustache, Mr. President." Well, they told me either lose the mustache or lose the election.
There you go. Okay, wow. I got to watch this trailer now after this is done. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right, well, that's exciting news.
That's the other big news that I had today was Captain America: New World Order trailer dropped, and it's looking good to me. Looking good to me.
That's cool, man. The tidbit I have is that Doctor Who is now back on Amazon Prime, so I'm able to watch Doctor Who again.
So what? They took it off for like a month or something?
Yeah, a couple months, and then they brought it back. So. So I'm almost done the Eccleston season, and looking forward to getting to start to see David Tennant's tenor on Doctor Who. So that's of interest. I've had to. I started up a different epic saga when Doctor Who went away. I had to watch something else, and I have to balance Doctor Who saga with the other epic saga. That epic saga is the Degrassi epic saga. So I've started watching all the Degrassis, which were also on Amazon Prime. So I just finished the Kids of Degrassi, and now I'm on the classic Degrassi Junior High. I did look up on Wiki. There's, of course, you're a big Kevin Smith fan, so you know that he's always been a big Degrassi fan.
Yes.
Now, did you ever watch Degrassi when you were a kid?
No, I never did.
You never, not even one episode?
Nope.
Really, you didn't flip and go, "What
I
the
saw
hell is
the
this?"
guy with the curly hair and the hat, and he just got under my nerves. And I was
Joey
like,
Jeremiah.
that guy alone was like, yeah, I'm not watching the show. I don't like that guy.
Well, then you won't appreciate that. The one actress, Caitlin was her name. She was, I think she became a love interest of Joey Jeremiah in the high school part. I don't know. I'll find out. Anyway,
Okay.
Kevin Smith actually wanted to cast her as Shannon Doherty's character in Mallrats. They couldn't make it work. So I think the studio probably wanted to have a bigger name. But yeah, he was big enough fan of the show because you would get it in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so you never saw Dagger. Okay, so then you can't appreciate then what I'm going through with this episode.
I also know Kevin Smith when they came back in the early thousands. He directs a few episodes of Degrassi as well as appearing on.
I think he has cameos. Yes, there is. You're talking about the dauntingness of anime episodes. I mean, I think when I can get to the original generation, they'll be fine. They actually called it The Next Generation, which is funny because it debuted, Junior High debuted when Star Trek The Next Generation came out. But they called the next one, which I think Drake is on it, Degrassi The Next Generation. If I'm going to go all that way, it's like 14 seasons. And I was like, oh my goodness. I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that. But we'll see. We'll see how hooked I get onto it. But it's great. It's lots of mature themes. Joey Jeremiah, he basically sells these grade seveners fake drugs, which is pretty funny. So they all take like vitamin candies and they all think they're on drugs. And of course they all want to they don't know how drugs work. So they all just pretend that they're feeling it.
It's like the placebo effect.
And all the other girls are they don't want to look like losers. So they pretend that they're feeling it. So they just start walking around the junior high, just like, whoa, and they're tripping out and they're giggling. And it's really funny.
Well, that's actually fun. I kind of started my own little epic journey with my 9-year-old Padawan last night, and we watched the first episode of the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yes, that's a good show. Unfortunate ethics of the creator, but whatever, the show is still good.
I don't even need to associate that with what I'm watching.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I'll be fine. I'll keep you busy. And so there you go. So we'll have to talk. Every now and then we'll probably share a bit about the latest Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode, Doctor Who episode, or Degrassi Junior High episode. So stay tuned, folks, for more fun pop culture stuff.
Yes, and to keep the Star Wars flowing, I've already been internally debating. I might actually have to finally get around to playing those Star Wars games that there's 2 of them out now. I can't even recall exactly what they're. Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, I think, are what those 2 games called. And I've never played them, so I'm thinking that's how I'm going to keep my Star Wars flowing through my veins as we wait. Because I think after the Acolyte, the rumor is before Christmas, the next Star Wars series will drop, which will be Star Wars: The Skeleton Crew. So that's a good 4 or 5 months with no Star Wars content. So
there you go, and Jude Law's now, right?
Yes.
All right, Nuance.
Scratch my itch. That's what I'll be doing, my friends.
Sounds good. Okay, Nuance. I think it's time to wrap. If you're all good.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well. Thanks for hosting, and thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time when we talk about the last episode of season 1 of The Acolytes.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, and may the Force be with you.